he thought that we were getting a divorce. So he called me and he was like, hey.
Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it, all right? Oh, wow. Wow. Will Smith just smacked the shit out of me.
Chris Rock just did something that Hollywood still can't fully wrap its head around. And the crazy part is, it didn't even happen on a big stage this time. No Oscars, no red carpet, no award show spotlight. Just a quiet return to the same old story that started everything. But now it feels heavier than before. Because 4 years later, the slap is still alive. And right when people thought the dust had finally started to settle, everything got stirred up again. New interviews, new clips, new reactions, and somehow new angles that make the whole situation feel like it never really ended. But before we get into what Chris Rock just did, we need to go back to where all of this actually began. Because you can't understand the present without remembering that one night that changed everything. It was the Oscars. The night was supposed to be about celebration, careers, awards, achievements, all of it. But instead, it turned into one of the most shocking live TV moments in history. Will Smith walking onto that stage, Chris Rock standing there mid-joke, and then the slap. That one moment split the world into two groups instantly. Some people said Will was protecting his wife, Jada Pinkett Smith, after a joke crossed a personal line. Others said nothing justifies that moment on a global stage. But after that night, Will Smith wasn't just Will Smith anymore. He became the slap. Everything after that was viewed through that single moment. Interviews, appearances, even apologies. And yes, he did apologize, saying he was out of line, embarrassed, and that violence was never the answer, while also explaining he was trying to protect his family. People were divided, but one thing was clear. His image changed forever. Meanwhile, Chris Rock stayed mostly quiet at first, but silence doesn't always mean peace. Over time, he started addressing it the only way he knows how, through comedy. And those jokes kept circling back to one name, Will Smith. Now it feels less like a one-time moment and more like an ongoing shadow, because she gave an interview that on the surface seemed simple. She was asked about her relationship with Will, specifically whether they were planning to live together again. A straightforward question. But her answer wasn't straightforward at all. She didn't clearly say yes. She didn't clearly say no. She kind of danced around it, explaining that they're still figuring things out, still navigating their situation in their own way. And that's where the internet did what it always does. It filled in the blanks. People started saying the marriage was basically already over in everything but name. Others said they've been separated emotionally for a long time. And suddenly, that one interview opened a door that nobody could close again. Because now people weren't just talking about the Oscars anymore. They were talking about the entire marriage. And once that happens, things start to spiral. Then came another layer. Reports and rumors started circulating online, suggesting that Jada has been spending time with other people, living her own life, and not really looking back. Now, none of that was officially confirmed in any solid way, but on the internet, perception moves faster than facts, and the perception was already forming. That Jada had moved on emotionally, and Will was still stuck trying to hold things together. And just when that narrative starts building up, Chris Rock steps back into the conversation in his own way, not with explanations, not with clarification, but with what he does best, turning pain into material. And now it doesn't feel random anymore. It feels timed, like he knows exactly when to drop it for maximum impact. Every time something new surfaces about Jada Pinkett Smith, every time the internet starts revisiting her marriage, Chris Rock somehow brings it back into the spotlight again. And that's why people are paying attention, because it doesn't feel like just jokes anymore. It feels like memory being reused as fuel. And that tension only grows because it keeps pulling Will Smith back into the same moment over and over again. But this isn't happening in isolation. The Will and Jada story has already been under public pressure for years, especially after Jada's entanglement reveal involving August Alsina. That moment changed everything. It wasn't rumors. It was them confirming it publicly. And sitting there beside her, Will's reaction said everything words couldn't. Shock, pain, silence. Since then, every new joke, every reference feels like reopening something that never fully healed. But instead of ending there, it kept going. They later confirmed they were living separately, not divorced, but not really together in the traditional sense either. Something in between, a relationship that exists on paper, but not fully in practice. And that alone created confusion that never really went away because people don't know how to define that kind of situation. And when people can't define something, they start guessing. And those guesses turned into theories. One of the most talked about ones is that Jada doesn't actually want to be the one to officially end the marriage. That she's been waiting for Will to make the final move. Whether that's true or not, nobody really knows. But the theory gained traction because of how many times she's publicly described their relationship as something ongoing, not something closed. And then there's the deeper history. The connection between Jada and Tupac Shakur has always been a major emotional layer in this story. Even years after his passing, that bond still gets mentioned, still gets analyzed, still gets brought into conversations about her marriage. Will himself has admitted he felt insecure about that connection. He's even admitted publicly that he struggled with the idea he might never fully measure up to what Jada Pinkett Smith and Tupac Shakur once shared. That kind of honesty hit different coming from someone like Will Smith. It added an emotional weight to the marriage that never really went away. Then came the infamous birthday story, an elaborate celebration Will planned with love and effort. But according to public discussion, Jada didn't connect with it the same way, feeling it was more about image than emotion. That disconnect became another piece people keep pointing to when analyzing them. Now, all of that history is already sitting there, unresolved and complicated. And then Chris Rock steps back in through jokes and references that only land if you know the full story. Every time he does, it feels like old wounds reopening, because for Will, that night is still a defining scar. And for Chris, it's still a public humiliation. And now the internet is dissecting everything, old clips, expressions, even pauses, turning every detail into meaning. The narrative is spinning fast, Will holding on, Jada moving independently, and the story only getting messier. And Chris Rock looks like he's still processing it through humor. And all of that together creates a triangle that keeps feeding itself. But the biggest escalation is still ahead, because the real emotional explosion comes when people start connecting something else, something even more symbolic. At this point, the story is no longer just about a slap or a marriage or even a few jokes. It's become something much bigger, something layered with ego, emotion, and public perception all mixed together. Because what people are really watching now is not just events, they're watching a long-term unraveling of image. And Will Smith's image used to be one of the strongest in Hollywood. The happy guy, the family man, the box office star, the guy everyone liked. But after that night at the Oscars, everything started getting rewritten in real time. And the strange part is, even his attempt to fix it didn't fully stop the damage. His apology was strong. He said he was wrong, that violence is never the answer, that he regretted what he did. But apologies in Hollywood don't always erase memory. And Chris Rock never really acted like it did. Instead, he started doing something different. He started using it, not in interviews where things can be controlled, but in stand-up where timing and delivery make everything sharper. And every time he brings it up, even indirectly, it reminds people that the moment is still alive for him, still personal, still unresolved. But what makes this whole situation even more layered is how Jada Pinkett Smith sits right at the center of it all. She's not just part of the story. She is the story in many ways. If every major moment loops back to her, the interviews, the entanglement, the unconventional marriage structure, the separation talk, the rumors, the public reactions, everything ties into her choices and her voice. And that's why even a small comment or vague answer from her sends the internet into overdrive, like it just unlocked a new piece of the puzzle. People are still trying to figure out what her relationship with Will Smith actually is. Love, history, obligation, or something far more complicated that outsiders can't decode. And that uncertainty keeps the story alive, because clarity would end it. But clarity never really comes, only interpretations. Now, with Chris Rock re-entering the conversation through jokes, the past and present are colliding again. Every time things calm down, something pulls it back, a clip, a rumor, a comment. And Will Smith is still carrying the weight of that one night, still defined by a reaction that lasted seconds but echoes for years. So is it over? Not even close. It's just evolving, sharper jokes, louder opinions, and a truth nobody fully agrees on.